The copper filaments in Marshal Thesk Vaughn's collar snapped upright before the chamber lights flickered. Across the hearing floor, Admiral Dorian Kest's restraint cuffs clicked against the black glass table. A second spark jumped from Kest's wrist to the metal edge. Nobody laughed. The conquered council had just finished declaring him unfit to command Earth's forces. Vaughn watched the human rub the red mark on his skin and look, not at the councillors who had condemned him, but at the tactical sun hanging above the chamber. The projection showed the Naka reach as a pale bowl of stars. A red corridor cut through it toward the disputed system of Kelverin. 73 conquered warships were already moving along that line. The strike order waiting for them was called the Cinder Mandate. Vaughn had written most of it. Admiral Kest, Chair Maylis Enhal said, "Your refusal has been reviewed by military, medical, and legal authorities. The Council finds your judgment impaired by prolonged command exposure and post-combat fixation. Earth's delegation has been notified." Kest's eyes stayed on the map. "Post-combat fixation," he repeated. "You have refused a lawful coalition order 3 times. I refused the same bad order 3 times. A ripple passed through the chamber. Vaughn felt the electrostatic prickle along the soft skin beneath his jaw. Orthel bodies were sensitive to charge imbalance. The council chamber had been built with separate grounding fields under every delegation platform so that one species, electrical equipment, did not irritate another species' nerves. Usually, Vaughn forgot the system existed. Today he could feel every shift. Chair Enhal folded her 4 narrow hands. "You were ordered to certify the target corridor is clear." "It is." "Our survey arrays show no civilian traffic." "Your survey arrays show no registered civilian traffic." "That distinction has been considered." "No," Kest said. "It has been filed." Vaughn looked at him more closely. The human Admiral was 58 by Earth count, broad through the shoulders, silver beginning at his temples. He did not look confused. He did not look fevered. He looked tired in the exact way Vaughn had seen experienced officers look when everyone in a room wanted them to agree quickly. That did not make Kest right. "Marshal Vaughn," Chair Enhal said, "state the operational consequence." Vaughn rose. The static in his collar settled as he placed both palms on the lectern. "Once the Cinder Mandate is authenticated, conquered forces will enter the Reach and neutralize Kelverin launch infrastructure before it becomes active. Earth units assigned to Coalition Command will support interdiction, screening, and rescue." Kest finally looked at him. "Rescue from what?" Vaughn held the gaze. "From the fighting your delay makes more likely." The human's face did not change. That steadiness had irritated Vaughn during the first review. It irritated him less now. He understood why Earth had made Kest an admiral. The man had a way of making silence feel like a question that belonged to someone else. Chair Enhal touched the vote field. One by one, council sigils turned white. The last was Earth's, locked dark because Kest had been suspended from coalition authority. "By council majority," Enhal said, "Dorian Kest is relieved of coalition command pending Earth's internal review. His refusal codes are void. The Cinder Mandate is active." A soft tone sounded. Above them, the red corridor brightened. 26 minutes appeared beside the lead formation. Kest lowered his eyes to the timer. Vaughn expected anger then, perhaps a demand, perhaps the first sign that the medical assessors had been right about fixation. Instead, Kest asked, "Did you reopen the grief band logs?" Vaughn frowned. "The what?" The low spectrum bursts under the survey noise. "We examined all tactical emissions." "Those aren't tactical." Chair Enhal's voice hardened. "This hearing is concluded." Kest leaned back. His cuffs sparked again. "The first ship you lose," he said quietly, "won't be Kelverin." That produced the reaction the earlier words had not. Council security moved. Vaughn lifted one hand. Wait. Kest turned his head toward him. What do you believe those bursts are? Vaughn asked. Kest's expression changed by almost nothing. People trying not to be found. Chair Enhal cut the exchange short. Marshal, the council has ruled. It had. Vaughn had voted for the ruling. He watched security lead Kest toward the side doors. The human stopped once when the tactical sun flickered. Not because of the timer, because a new contact had appeared at the far edge of the system. No transponder. No drive flare. Just a narrow line in the sensor field, where background radiation seemed to bend around something moving very slowly out of the star's glare. Vaughn's color filaments rose again. A sensor officer leaned toward his console. Unknown mass entering the inner chart. Kelverin, Enhal asked. No, Chair. Vaughn had seen the silhouette once before. In a treaty archive. He had assumed the file was old. Earth Dreadnought, he said. Kest stopped at the door. The chamber became very quiet. The sensor officer swallowed. Confirmed. Registry identifies the vessel as ECS Long Memory. Chair Enhal turned to Kest. Did you summon that ship? No. Did Earth? I don't know. The answer sounded genuine. That was worse. Vaughn called up the ship's status. Long Memory had been attached to a sovereign reserve anchorage beyond the conquered sunshade, inactive through the entire Kelverin dispute. Its reactor should have been cold. Its command lattice was supposed to require dual authorization from Earth and Coalition control before entering a joint theater. Yet the Dreadnought was moving. Send Coalition authentication, Vaughn ordered. The signal went out. Long Memory did not answer. Send Earth delegation authentication. The second signal went out. Nothing. Chair Enhal's eyes narrowed. Then it is malfunctioning. Kest turned back toward the hearing floor. No, he said. Vaughn looked at him. You know that from silence. I know that ship. You commanded it. Once. That was the first credential Kest had offered all day. Vaughn felt a faint discharge snap between two claws. When? Long enough ago that your archive probably calls it irrelevant. Enhal gestured to security. Remove him. Kest went without resisting. The Dreadnought continued inward. By the time its registry data populated the tactical sun, Vaughn had a strange new problem. Long Memory was not heading toward the Kelverin corridor. It was heading toward the Council. Not the planet. Not the fleet yard. The Council chamber itself. Vaughn sat and opened the old treaty archive. The first page described the Dreadnought as a strategic deterrent. The second described its weapons. The third carried a warning Vaughn had never noticed because, until that moment, it had sounded ceremonial. Earth sovereign warships do not accept command authority by credential alone. He read the line twice. Then he opened Kest's refusal file. For the first time, he did not read it as evidence of impairment. Vaughn found the first contradiction 9 minutes later. It was not hidden. That embarrassed him more than if Kest had buried it under human encryption. The grief band bursts sat beneath the Council's own sensor returns, too weak to trip tactical filters. They came in irregular clusters from dust pockets inside the Naka reach. No standard transponder header, no military handshake, no commerce code. Just narrow pulses, repeated with small timing errors. A junior analyst had labeled them debris reflection. Kest had labeled them breathing room. Vaughn enlarged the packet map until the tactical sun filled half the chamber. Why were these excluded? He asked. The analyst stiffened. They do not match any registered civilian beacon standard. That is not what I asked. They were below confidence threshold. For what? Vessel classification. Vaughn looked at the 26-minute strike timer. Less than half remained. Chair Enhal had moved the council into emergency session. Kest was being held in a secured consultation room 1 deck below. Earth's diplomatic delegation had protested his detention, but had not threatened force. That restraint, which had seemed like weakness to some councillors during the morning, now felt different with long memory approaching. Run the bursts as distress behavior, Vaughn said. The analyst hesitated. Marshal, distress beacons are standardized. Assume these people do not want the Kelverin batteries to see them. That changed the model. The chamber computers stopped asking whether the pulses were valid beacons and started asking whether they behaved like concealed life traffic. Patterns appeared. Not proof, not yet, but enough to make Vaughn's stomach tighten. Several bursts moved against local dust drift. Others vanished whenever Kelverin military scans swept their region, then resumed afterward. A cluster near the route, designated Strike Lane Amber, changed position by tiny amounts over hours. Debris did not hide. Vaughn sent the result to Chair Enhal. She read it without expression. Confidence. Low. Then the order stands. It is no longer 0. The order was not based on 0 civilian probability. It was based on acceptable operational risk. Vaughn's collar prickled. Bring him back, Vaughn said. Enhal's eyes sharpened. Why? Because I want to know what else he saw. You were present at 3 hearings. I was present while trying to prove he should obey. A pause. That was close to an admission, and the council heard it. Enhal gave the order. Kest returned without the restraint cuffs. Vaughn noticed the skin around his wrists was still red. The human took one look at the enlarged griefband map and then at Vaughn. You changed the filter. Yes. Good. No triumph, no insult. Vaughn found that more unsettling than either. How did you identify them? He asked. Kest approached the map. Pattern recognition from evacuation work. You personally served in evacuation fleets. Everyone who stays in uniform long enough serves in one. That is not an answer. It's the one that matters. Kest pointed to 3 moving clusters. Those are cold-running hulls, probably old transports. They coast during military scans and use microburns when the dust brightens. This one is venting heat into a debris wake. That one is transmitting through a damaged mining laser instead of a beacon. The analyst stared. How can you tell? I can't. Not yet. Vaughn caught himself before reacting. Kest looked at him. That's why I refused the strike. Chair Enhal spoke from the raised council tier. You halted coalition action on a suspicion. I halted Earth's participation. You knew that would delay everyone else. I hoped it would. There it was. Not confusion. Intent. Vaughn felt the old argument return in a more dangerous form. If Kest had been mentally impaired, the problem was simple. Remove him, replace him, continue. If he had been fully competent, then the council had not solved the problem by declaring him unfit. It had mislabeled disagreement as malfunction. A priority alarm cut across the chamber. Long memory had reached the inner security boundary. The tactical projection reformed. The Dreadnought's 3 armored spines now showed clearly. They were dull gray, scarred by old thermal patches and newer repair plates that did not match. No ceremonial hull crest covered the structure. The only visible Earthmark was a small blue planet disk near the forward crossbrace. Coalition Control is ordering it to halt, Vaughn said. The sensor officer answered, "It is reducing velocity." Chair Enhal exhaled. Then the officer added, "Not to the ordered profile." Long Memory rotated its 3 spines independently. For a moment, the ship looked as if it were coming apart. Then the cross braces flexed. The open spaces between the spines changed shape, becoming a wide, triangular frame pointed toward the Council's sunward defense net. Vaughn rose. Targeting posture. No weapons lock. Drive posture. The officer's hands moved faster. "I don't know." Vaughn did. He had read the archive section on the ship's propulsion while Kest was detained. Long Memory did not turn by pushing against space like conquered vessels. It altered the local vector balance across its separated spines, producing controlled shear between them. The same system that moved the Dreadnought could make nearby guidance solutions drift. The archive called it distributed inertial steering. It also contained a sentence Vaughn had dismissed as engineering pride. The vessel's primary defense is control of relative motion. He looked at Kest. The Admiral had gone still. "Can it breach the defense net?" Vaughn asked. "Yes." "How?" "I won't explain that in this room." "Can it do so without firing?" "Yes." Chair Enhal leaned forward. "Admiral Kest, by authority of the Conquered Council, order your vessel to halt." Kest did not move. "You removed my authority." "Earth has not." "You declared me unfit." "The emergency situation requires cooperation." Kest looked up at her. "Then decide which claim you believe." The chamber lights dimmed. Every copper grounding filament under the Earth delegation platform lifted at once. Vaughn felt a wave of static crawl from his ankles to the base of his skull. The sensor officer shouted, "Incoming authentication field." A blue-white line passed through the chamber projection. It was not a weapon. Long Memory was asking a question. Vaughn's display filled with handshake layers older than the current Conquered Charter. Most were machine-readable. One was not. It contained no command. It requested access to Kest's complete refusal record. Chair Enhal's voice went flat. "Deny." Kest looked at Vaughn. "Not Enhal." Vaughn understood why. He was the war marshal. He had authored the operational recommendation. His office controlled the evidence chain. The ship was not asking the Council whether Kest held rank. It was asking what Kest had done with it. "Marshal," Enhal warned. Vaughn's fear became clean then. Not fear of Earth. Fear of making the next decision for the same reason he had made the last one. He released the file. Long Memory received 6 days of Kest's objections, raw sensor logs, survey confidence tables, Kelverin threat assessments, and every order the Admiral had refused. The ship remained silent for 12 seconds. The Council chamber seemed to charge around them. Then a voice arrived over every speaker. It was plain, sexless, and almost quiet. "Command, continuity, review complete." Kest closed his eyes once. The voice continued. Admiral Dorian Kest recognized. Chair Enhal stood. "Recognition is disputed by this Council." Dispute recorded. A new field appeared in the tactical sun. Earth Sovereign Command, active. Below it came a second line. Cinder Mandate, void as Joint War Authority. Enhal's face hardened. On what basis? Long Memory answered immediately. Target certification conflict under sovereign integration rules. The grief band clusters lit one by one across the reach. The ship had seen them too. not as clean civilian icons, not as certainty, as unresolved lives inside a kill corridor. Vaughn stared at the map. How many? He asked. Long memory did not answer him with a number first. It opened the raw evidence. Heat shadows, course corrections, improvised laser pulses, a transport rotating to hide its radiators behind a dead freighter. Then the estimate appeared. 1,240 probable non-combatants. Vaughn's breath stopped. The number hung over the council floor. An analyst whispered it aloud. 1,240. That was when the room changed. Not because the Dreadnought was large. Not because it had crossed the security boundary. Because everyone in the chamber knew what Strike Lane Amber was meant to become. Chair Enhal recovered first. Probability is not proof. No, Kest said. His voice was calm. It's responsibility. Enhal pointed at the tactical sun. The Kelverin batteries remain a confirmed threat. A sovereign vessel does not possess authority to erase a council vote. Long memory replied before Kest could. Council vote retained. Joint War Authority void. Vaughn turned toward the speakers. The ship continued. Earth participation withdrawn. Coalition dependence on Earth targeting, screening, rescue, and fire control integration fails mandatory execution conditions. Cinder mandate cannot lawfully command the integrated fleet. The red strike corridor vanished. Every Allied formation line broke into amber fragments. Vaughn felt cold despite the static on his skin. The Council's political decision still existed in its record. Its executable war order did not. Long memory had recognized Kest, voided the mandate as joint operational authority, and exposed how much of the Council's supposedly independent command depended on human consent. Chair Enhal looked at Vaughn. Can the fleet proceed? He examined the new geometry. Yes, he said. Kest watched him. Vaughn forced himself to finish. But not as ordered. For the first time that day, the strike timer stopped. The stopped timer bought them exactly nothing. The lead conquered formation was already inside the NACO reach. Its commander, Commodore Seren Vask, had received the Cinder mandate before long memory invalidated Earth's participation. Under Conquered doctrine, an authenticated war order remained active until rescinded by the issuing authority. The Council had not rescinded it. Vask sent a type beam request. Proceed under original authority. Chair Enhal answered before Vaughn could speak. Proceed, revise formation locally. Avoid unconfirmed civilian clusters. Vaughn stared at the order. Kest did not. He was watching the lead formation. Marshal, he said, tell her to stop. Enhal's head snapped toward him. You do not address the war marshal as your subordinate. Kest ignored her. Vaughn asked, why? Because the Kelverin batteries have been waiting for a partial commitment. You believe this is a trap. I believe they know our doctrine. That is not the same thing. No, it's worse. The first conquered ships crossed the boundary. Kelverin space remained dark. No batteries fired. No interceptors launched. No warding came. Commodore Vask spread her formation to avoid the probable civilian clusters. That forced her screening ships away from the center line and lengthened the distance between defensive nodes. Vaughn saw it. So did Kest. The human said, there. A cluster of dead satellites near the far side of the reach came alive. Not with weapons. With mirrors. Thousands of thin reflective panels unfolded and caught the local star. The sensor picture shattered. Ghost contacts multiplied across the formation. Range estimates split. Guidance solutions jumped from one target to another. Optical deception, an analyst said. Vaughn was already issuing corrections. Switch to active ranging, collapse outer screen. Vask tighten on command ship. A reply arrived through static. Trying. Then Kelverin batteries fired. They did not target the formation center. They targeted the empty spaces Vask had created to protect possible civilians. Vaughn understood a second too late. The shots were not meant to hit ships. They were meant to force the fleet inward. Conquered vessels turned away from the incoming fire and bunched toward their own command core. Their collision avoidance systems began negotiating thousands of conflicting paths through a sensor field full of false contacts. The Kelverin had converted caution into geometry. Chair Enhal whispered, "They knew." Kest answered, "They guessed." "Difference. We can still prove them wrong." Vaughn's display flashed warnings. Vaughn opened fleet-wide command. All vessels cancel mandate geometry, free navigation, defensive posture. Enhal stood, "Marshal, I am not rescinding the war order. I am preventing a traffic kill." That distinction mattered to the Council. It mattered less to the ships. Vask acknowledged. The formation began to loosen. Then 3 Kelverin kinetic rounds passed through the outer screen and struck a conquered destroyer. The ship rolled. Its drive cut. Vaughn heard Vask shout for rescue craft. Kest looked at the tactical sun. "Long memory," he said. The chamber froze. The Dreadnought answered. "Admiral, enter the Reach." Chair Enhal slammed her hand onto the council rail. "Denied." Kest looked at Vaughn. Again, the choice came to him. He felt the charge fields under the floor pulsing as long memory increased power beyond the chamber's shielding assumptions. Tiny blue sparks ran along the edge of his lectern. "Marshal," Enhal demanded. Vaughn keyed, "Open the inner boundary." Entry authorized for rescue and defensive support. The Dreadnought moved. Long memory did not accelerate like a warship. Its 3 spines shifted relative to one another. The central spine slid forward, the port spine aft, the starboard spine down. White ribbons stretched between them, not as beams but as sharp lines in the surrounding dust. Then the entire vessel changed velocity. No flare. No violent plume. One moment, it was outside the Reach. The next sensor frame placed it among the conquered formation. The chamber erupted. Vaughn barely heard it. Every hair-fine filament along his neck had lifted. Long memory's arrival changed the local motion map. Not dramatically at first. A damaged destroyer that had been tumbling toward a cruiser stopped closing. 2 frigates on collision paths, separated by a few meters more than their own thrusters could have produced. A Kelverin kinetic round missed a carrier because its relative angle shifted by less than a degree. Small changes. Precise changes. The kind a frightened observer might call luck. Vaughn knew better. "Distributed inertial field," he whispered. Kest glanced at him. "You read the archive." "I read the summary." "Then you read the part written for people who don't fly it." Another Kelverin salvo entered the formation. Long memory's spines rotated. The white ribbons bent. Across the Reach, 73 conquered ships received the same warning at once. External vector assist available. Accept/decline. Vaughn stared. The Dreadnought was asking permission. Not taking control. Commodore Vask accepted first. Then the damaged destroyer. Then the rescue cutter nearest it. Other captains followed. Each accepting ship gained a thin blue line on the tactical sun. Long memory did not seize their engines. It changed the relative motion around them, just enough to give their own engines safer choices. The compressed formation opened like a fist releasing. Kelverin rounds passed through widening gaps. A carrier cleared the sensor mirror field. 3 frigates pulled the damaged destroyer behind its armor screen. The council chamber watched a fleet recover without a single shot fired by the Earth Dreadnought. Then the Kelverin changed tactics. Their batteries stopped shooting at ships and fired at the mirror cloud. Panels burst. Fragments flooded the reach. Thousands of sharp, fast pieces turned every evasive path into another collision problem. Commodore Vask's voice cracked over the feed. "Long memory, we need a corridor." The Dreadnought replied, "Specify protected vectors." Vask hesitated. Kest said, "She doesn't know your language." Long memory remained silent. The human stepped closer to Vaughn's lectern. "Open my command channel." Enhal said, "Absolutely not." Vaughn asked Kest, "What will you order?" "Nothing that requires your fleet to trust me." "That is not an answer." "I'll give the ship a boundary, not a formation." Vaughn understood just enough to be afraid. "What boundary?" Kest pointed to the probable civilian clusters. "Those live. Our ships live. Kelverin crews live if they stop firing. Everything else is negotiable." Enhal's voice went cold. "You include enemy batteries." "I include crews." "They are firing on us." "Then disable the batteries." "With what?" Kest looked at the Dreadnought on the map. "The thing you declared me unfit for refusing to use." Vaughn opened the channel. Kest spoke once. "Long memory. Preserve marked life zones. Open a safe vector to retreat. Remove active firing solutions outside them." "Confirmed." The Dreadnought's 3 spines widened. For the first time, Vaughn saw the weapons hidden inside their inner faces. Not barrels. Rows of narrow field vanes. The same system that bent relative motion around Allied ships, condensed along a series of lines crossing the reach. A Kelverin battery fired. Its projectile left the launcher, traveled 6 ship lengths, and curved. Not much. Enough. It missed the conquered fleet and buried itself in empty dust. The battery fired again. The second round curved farther. A third never cleared the launcher. Its guidance cradle twisted out of alignment as the local vector reference shifted beneath it. Safeties killed the shot. Across the reach, other batteries suffered the same failure. Turrets turned to calculated positions and found the targets no longer there in the coordinate frame their computers expected. Missiles launched and drifted off solution. No hulls exploded. No crews died on Vaughn's display. The Kelverin kept trying. Long memory kept taking the geometry away. Vaughn had seen fleets defeated. He had seen ships destroyed faster than their crews could understand. This was different. The Dreadnought was not overpowering the enemy's armor. It was making violence fail at the level of aim. The Kelverin commander finally understood. Battery icons went dark one after another. Not destroyed. Powered down. Commodore Vask's fleet emerged from the mirror cloud. The damaged destroyer was still alive. Rescue craft reached it. Vaughn followed his gaze. Long memory's estimate had changed. The clusters were moving. Fast. One of them had broken from the dust and was burning toward conquered lines. The sensor image sharpened enough to show a transport hull patched with plates from several different ship classes. Then another appeared. Then another. Old mining tenders. Passenger barges. A tug with an engine nacelle, welded where a cargo boom should have been. Ships that had survived by being too broken, too quiet, or too unregistered to count. The first transport transmitted on open band. The signal was weak. The language was Kelverin. Vaughn's translator rendered it after a delay. Do not fire, children aboard. We are not military. No one in the council chamber moved. A second transmission arrived. Then several more. 1,240 had been an estimate. The first visible convoy was enough. Chair Enhal sat slowly. Vaughn felt the static under his collar settle, then rise again as another alarm sounded. This one came from behind the conquered formation. Marshal, an analyst said, we have a launch event from our own rear echelon. Vaughn turned. 3 autonomous strike carriers, operating under the original Cinder mandate, had received their target packets before the formation order was changed. Their weapons had already launched. The warheads were deep inside the reach. Long memories, local vector control, could protect the fleet. It could not simply drag the weapons backward without crossing the civilian escape paths. Kest's face tightened for the first time. How long? Vaughn asked. The analyst answered. Less than 4 minutes to terminal separation. Enhal stood again. Order self-destruct. Vask answered from the fleet. Negative. Warheads are inside the convoy debris field. Detonation will fragment everything around them. Vaughn saw it all at once. The council had found the civilians. It had stopped the fleet. The Kelverin batteries were quiet. And the Cinder mandate was still trying to kill the people Kest had refused to erase. Kest looked at Long Memory. The Dreadnought did not speak. It was waiting for a command. Kest did not give the command immediately. That frightened Vaughn more than if he had shouted one. The Admiral walked to the edge of the tactical sun and studied the geometry. The launched weapons were spreading into separate approach lanes. The refugee convoy was climbing across those lanes. Conquered ships were too far away to intercept cleanly. Kelverin batteries had powered down, but their crews could not help without risking being mistaken for renewed attackers. Long Memory could destroy the warheads. It could not destroy them safely where they were. Kest looked at Commodore Vask's formation. Marshal, he said, I need your ships to stop accelerating. Vaughn stared at him. In a live weapons field. For 90 seconds. That makes them easier targets. The Kelverin batteries are down. They can come back. Yes. Vaughn understood the choice. The Dreadnought needed stable reference masses. Every conquered ship, still changing velocity, added uncertainty to the field Long Memory was shaping. If the fleet coasted, the Earth vessel could use the whole formation as a fixed geometry instead of 73 independent problems. But Kest was asking an allied fleet, still inside enemy space, to surrender maneuver. Not to him. To physics. Chair Enhal said, no. Vaughn opened fleet-wide command. All conquered vessels hold current vector, drives to minimum correction only. Enhal turned on him, Marshal Vaughn. He did not look away from the map. I authored the order that launched those weapons. You are exceeding your authority. No, I am finally using it. Commodore Vask's answer came first. Lead formation, holding vector. One after another, ship icons steadied. The tactical sun became simpler. Long Memory moved into the center of them. Its 3 spines separated farther than Vaughn had yet seen. Cross braces telescoped until the ship looked less like a hull than a machine trying to define the shape of empty space. The chamber's grounding system whined. Static snapped across Vaughn's claws. Kest reached for the edge of the glass table, then stopped before touching it. A mundane gesture. A man remembering that the table would shock him. For some reason, that small hesitation fixed Vaughn's attention more firmly than the Dreadnought. Kest was not fearless. He was simply busy. Long memory, he said. Build a capture corridor sunward of the convoy. No terminal detonations. No hull strikes. Keep a retreat vector open for Kelverin batteries. Field margin is narrow. I know. Conquered mass stability required. Vaughn keyed his channel. You have it. The ship recognized his voice, but did not acknowledge his authority. That no longer offended him. Long memory began. The first warhead entered the field. Its path bent. The change was almost too small to see, then too large to mistake. The weapon's nose swung away from the convoy. Its guidance thrusters fired to correct. The field bent it again. The warhead fought. Long memory did not. It kept altering the reference the weapon used to decide what straight meant. The missile curved into the open sunward lane. A second followed. Then a third. The weapons were not being pulled into the Dreadnought. They were being persuaded by relentless geometry to miss. A warning flared. One warhead had switched to inertial backup. Its guidance computer stopped trusting external reference points and locked onto its own internal measure. Vaughn's heart kicked. Can you take it? He asked. Kest answered, not the same way. There was no second hidden weapon. No miracle waiting inside the first. Long memory used what it had. The Dreadnought rotated. One of its outer spines moved directly across the warhead's approach. Chair Enhal inhaled sharply. Vaughn saw the choice. The ship could destroy the weapon at range and risk the convoy. Or it could take the impact where its armor could contain the debris. Kest's jaw tightened. Brace forward, spine. Long memory obeyed. The warhead struck. The tactical projection washed white. For a fraction of a second, Vaughn thought the entire Dreadnought had vanished. Then the image returned. The forward third of one spine was dark, armor peeled back, several field vanes gone. Atmosphere alarms flashed inside sealed compartments. The other two spines remained in position. Long memory kept bending the remaining weapons away. Vaughn looked at Kest. The human's hand had closed around the table edge despite the static. A blue spark snapped into his palm. He did not release it. Casualties? He asked. Long memory answered. Crew injuries, no deaths reported. Kest's shoulders dropped by a degree. Continue. That was the moment Vaughn stopped thinking of the ship as proof that the Council had underestimated Earth. The ship had already proved that. What mattered now was what Earth did with the advantage. Long memory could have fired on the strike carriers that launched the weapons. It did not. It could have destroyed Kelverin batteries after they powered down. It did not. It could have seized the motion of Allied ships without consent. It had asked. And when its precision reached a limit, it had put its own armor between the mistake and the people the Council had failed to count. The last warhead crossed the capture corridor. Long memory bent it sunward. Its fuel ran dry. The weapon drifted past the refugee convoy into empty space. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of the patch transports transmitted. A child was crying somewhere behind the speaker. The voice said, "Conquered fleet, we request passage." Vaughn answered before anyone else could. Passage granted. Maintain current vector. Rescue ships are moving to you. Kest looked at him. Vaughn did not need approval from the human. He was still grateful not to see contempt. Commodore Vask began assigning escorts. Kelverin batteries stayed dark. The Cinder mandate remained on the council display as a voided order for another 40 seconds before Vaughn opened the authority pane. Chair Enhal saw what he was doing. Marshal, do not. He selected the order. The system asked for the reason. Vaughn had written thousands of operational phrases in his career. He knew how to make failure sound conditional, temporary, procedural. He did not do that now. Target certification, invalid. Civilian presence confirmed. Coalition attack suspended. The system requested his seal. He gave it. The Cinder mandate turned grey. Then it disappeared from every fleet display. Chair Enhal's voice was very quiet. You have forced a constitutional review. Yes. You may not remain war marshal after it. Vaughn looked at the refugee convoy, threading between conquered ships. That will be part of the review. Kest finally stepped away from the table. Now release me. Enhal's eyes moved to him. The hearing that had begun with his unfitness ruling was technically still in session. He opened Kest's status field. The original ruling was still there. Command fitness suspended. Long memories recognition sat beside it. Earth Sovereign Command active. 2 incompatible truths on the same screen. Enhal said, the Council cannot allow a warship to decide whether an officer is competent. Kest nodded. Agreed. That answer surprised her. He continued. Long memory didn't decide I was competent. Vaughn understood before Enhal did. It decided his command chain remained valid, he said. Kest looked at him, because my refusal was within Earth's sovereign rules. Enhal's face tightened, a distinction without consequence. No, Vaughn said, a distinction we ignored. He pulled up the human command charter. The warning from the archive was there again. Earth sovereign warships did not accept command authority by credential alone. Below it, in denser language, was the part Vaughn had missed the first time. Continuity depended on accountable decision records, lawful refusal, crew confirmation, and sovereign review. A human ship could not be handed a new master simply because another institution declared the old one inconvenient. That made Earth's command system slower to capture. It also made it harder to rush into a bad war. The Council had interpreted friction as dysfunction. Vaughn had built a war plan around that mistake. He faced Kest. When you said the first ship we would lose would not be Kelverin, you meant long memory. Kest glanced at the damaged spine in the tactical sun. I hoped I was wrong. You expected it to shield the convoy. I expected it to protect whatever we proved was alive. Even from us. Especially from us. The words landed without drama. Vaughn looked around the chamber. Vaughn requested a formal motion. Chair Enhal stared at him. You cannot be serious. I move to rescind the finding of coalition incapacity against Admiral Dorian Kest. The Council lacks authority over his Earth rank. Then our finding never removed it. It only removed coalition standing. Kest said nothing. Vaughn continued. I further move that any future coalition preemptive strike requiring sovereign military integration must include a refusal review. A sovereign commander may halt that integration if target certification is materially disputed, pending independent evidence review. One councillor objected immediately. Another asked how long such review could delay action. A third demanded a threshold. Good. They were arguing about procedure now, not Kest's sanity. The old category was dead. The council voted. Not unanimously. It did not need to be. Kest's coalition standing was restored. The council formally rescinded the Cinder mandate, confirming the void long memory had already enforced against the joint fleet. The refugee corridor was placed under joint protection until civilian vessels cleared the reach. Kelverin batteries remained under watch, but no strike resumed. And Vaughn's refusal review motion passed with amendments that would make lawyers miserable for years. Only after the vote did Chair Enhal order Kest's restraint record erased. A technician approached the Earth platform. At the start of the hearing, security had isolated its grounding field when Kest was detained. The platform had been left electrically separate from the council floor, a minor safety protocol that had made every touch spark. The technician reset the field. Vaughn felt the chamber charge redistribute through the soles of his feet. Kest placed one hand on the black glass table. No spark jumped. Outside, long memory drifted beside the refugee convoy, with one armored spine burned open to space. Rescue lights moved along the damage. The Dreadnought sent no victory signal. Kest watched it for a moment, then reached down and picked up the pair of restraint cuff security had left on the table. He carried them to Vaughn. The Orthel Marshal looked at the metal rings. "What am I supposed to do with these?" "Next time you think refusal is a medical symptom," Kest said, "put them somewhere you can see them." Vaughn accepted the cuffs. Not as a trophy. As evidence. Beyond the chamber glass, the patch transports crossed the council's defense line one by one. Long memory turned with them. Its two unbroken spines shifted into escort position. And the fleet made room.